Today I'm going to be making the Rayo's famous meatballs. Rayo's is a restaurant in New York. It's impossible to get reservations to, but they do have the recipe for their famous meatballs. So I'm going to try their recipe and try to follow it as closely as possible, and I'll see how it turns out. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our meat mixture. The recipe originally calls for 1 pound of ground beef to half a pound of veal and half a pound of pork. But I only got 1 pound of this meatloaf mix, which contains all 3 meats. So this is the closest thing that I could find. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add about 3/4 of a tablespoon of chopped parsley right in here. And a 1/4 of a tablespoon of chopped garlic. I don't know why there's so little garlic in this recipe, but that's what the recipe calls for, so that's what I'm going to go with. I would like to put more garlic, but let's give this a try and see how that turns out. Hopefully it won't be too bland. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add half a cup of Parmesan cheese. The recipe calls for Pecorino Romano, but I'm not a big fan of it. I think it's a little too strong. So I'm using grated Parmesan cheese. And then I'm going to add 1 egg. And then I'm going to add some salt and pepper to mix. The salt and pepper have been added. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle in some breadcrumbs. And this is half a cup of plain breadcrumbs. And I'm going to mix it together by hand now with clean hands. And once this is mixed, I'm going to go ahead and add some lukewarm water. Not too much, but just enough to give it some moisture. The recipe doesn't really say how much water to add, but I guess that's one of the secrets of their ingredients, is to add some water to this recipe. So that's what I'm going to try to do once I get all of this mixed in. So I did mix it, and the meat mixture does look a little bit dry. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of water. So let's go ahead and try to I'm just going to add very, very little. And let's see if that will help. It seems to be mixing better with a little bit of water, so. Let's go ahead and add some more. Try not to overmix the meat. And maybe just a smidge more water. When I got this mixture, it didn't really say how much percent fat the beef had and the pork and everything like that. So generally with meatballs, I usually use about 85%, 80% meat to fat ratio. But it looks like the meatballs are pretty done. It looks very moist and smells pretty good. So let's go ahead and round this up and make round meatballs. So now the meatballs, I made them kind of large meatballs. And the next thing to do after we rounded them is to saute them in some olive oil. I'm just waiting for the oil to heat up. You want the pan to be hot, but not for the oil to be smoking. So I put it on looks like low heat, and I'm letting it heat up slowly. And then once it gets hot enough, then I'll go ahead and sear the meatballs. Okay, so I put a tiny piece of meat in, and it seems to be searing, so I think it's okay to go ahead and get this started. I'm not going to put all of them at once because it's going to overcrowd the pan. In the Reyes restaurant, he deep fried it, but in the recipe on the website, they actually say to just use half a cup of olive oil. So that's what I'm going to do here. So sorry guys, my camera was full, but anyway, I browned the meatballs and then I put them with the pasta and sauce, and I just had to be careful not to break the meatballs because they can break. But anyway, so I'm letting it simmer in the pasta and sauce for about 10 minutes or so. And it looks like it just has a few more minutes to go. And I saved a little bit of the pasta water just in case it gets dried out, which I think I can kind of add in here. So I'll go ahead and do that. So just a tiny bit of pasta water. In here, and it's just about done. So I plated it up, and these are pretty large meatballs, so it looks like 2 meatballs is enough for 1 serving. And these noodles are from Amish Village. These are Amish noodles, egg noodles. They taste pretty good, so I decided to use that. And let's go ahead and dig in and see how this looks. It's not bad. The water does make it tender, and it does make the meat very moist. I do think it could have used a little bit more sauce, but other than that, I think it turned out pretty well. Maybe not the same as the restaurant, but again, with the restaurant, you don't know where they get their meat from. You don't know who their supplier is. You don't even know if it's the original recipe. So, but all in all, I think it turned out pretty well. So thanks for watching.